Time to take a look at making my next video game purchase. I do like me some video games from time to time. Man, inflation is affecting everything these days. If only there was a comprehensive guide out there with tips and tricks on how to save money while video game hunting. Eureka! I found a video on this really cool YouTube channel called Level 1 Sword. Let's give it a watch. You're watching a video of me, but I am you. And you're watching a video of me watching a video of me.
Ugh, just get on with it. I hate when YouTubers think they're so funny.
I don't like spending any more money than I absolutely need to. And call me crazy, but I have a feeling that you're on the same page. I would not call myself a game collector, however. I'm just a gamer who has amassed a decent-sized collection, and I've learned a thing or two along the way. I buy games with every intent on playing and beating them, so I honestly don't have the time to be collecting every single game for any one system in particular or anything like that. So if you'd rather watch an actual collector's tips and tricks video, I wouldn't hold it against you. There's plenty available to watch. I will be covering tips for purchasing both games and systems. In regards to games, I tend to only collect games and cases and not sweat too much about the manual. I will be making a few generalizations here and there, but I completely realize there are exceptions out there. That's what makes a generalization a generalized statement, after all. While the recent lockdowns have made both shipping costs and video game prices go up, and inflation hasn't helped any either, there will always be good deals to be had, so don't be discouraged. Just don't plan on finding too many steals. I'll also be touching on location, which can also determine how much you end up spending, both with physical stores and having stuff shipped to you. Finally, most of what I'll be saying in this video applies strictly to physical games. If you want to get good deals on digital games, I would just recommend following someone on Twitter or even here on YouTube who tracks digital store sales. They happen a lot more often than you might think. Generally speaking, when it comes to used games, the better a game sold back in its heyday, the more copies there are available of it, making it less expensive. This, of course, is not always the case. The most famous example of a game series which sold a whole lot of copies but only gains value every year would have to be Pokemon. The mainline games, mind you, not the spin-offs. That being said, let's focus on getting good deals on retro games. Unfortunately, the older the game, the more expensive they tend to get. Again, this isn't a universal truth or anything. Atari prices have come back down, and I doubt they will go back up in value as they are simply too old and lack meaningful popularity. Game prices have also started to rise sooner and sooner in the game's life. It used to be the case you could find games as old as 15 years old for a good deal. Much of that is due to the kids growing up and making their own money who used to play these older games who want to get back into the hobby, and then wanting to reacquire their favorite games from their youth. But now, it's more likely you'll only find plenty of rock-bottom prices amongst games up to 10 years old. What I tend to look for when I'm retro game hunting are loose games which originally came in cardboard boxes. This is true of older cartridge-based systems. But disc-based games and games that come on cards like Switch and DS games, I always make sure I get the case to go with it. Smaller cartridges like Game Boy and Game Gear games came with clear, protective cases which are super easy and cheap to come by today. If you're going for a complete in-box copy, you might want to see how much it would be to hunt down the components separately. I picked up Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon and saved quite a bit by picking the game up loose from a local GameStop and buying the case separately on eBay. Sometimes, though, people will only let the case go for a fairly unreasonable amount of money. If you can't find a case for a good price, you can always get a reproduction case. People have begun 3D printing or repurposing cases from other games to make cases for the more collectible titles. These are fairly priced and can be found on places like Etsy. When it comes to more modern games, there's some great news. Anything as recent as the 360 and PS3 generation is dirt cheap still. You will need to be aware that some people seem to believe that just because they have a physical copy of a video game, they are sitting on a gold mine. Just ignore those listings. I recently ran into that issue with Dragon Ball FighterZ for Switch, and I ended up getting it for $20 at GameStop. Speaking of which, I got them to price match their own website at the store. They'll price match anybody so long as it's another retailer, so that's a great policy to use to your advantage. Also, keep in mind they sometimes have great sales like buy two, get one free. One problem that is unique to the more recent games stems from the newer niche publishers such as Limited Run and Super Rare. They will release games as a physical edition in extremely limited quantities. You usually have a couple of weeks to place an open order that are available by ordering directly from the publishers. These games are initially only available digitally, and there is quite the markup for a physical copy. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is available to download from the Nintendo eShop for $15, but I purchased my physical copy from Limited Run Games for $35. Maybe I do enjoy spending more money than necessary. Sometimes retailers like Best Buy will carry these rare games, and they could always show up in a used game store too. So if you see one you want, scoop it up. Otherwise, these games can actually go on sale on digital storefronts, so you might get a killer deal if you don't have to have the physical version. Moving on to systems, the same rules go for both retro and modern systems. I'd advise not chasing the complete in-box sets unless you have the cash to burn and really want all of it. I've seen a console box listed for the same price that the console itself goes for. I do care about the cosmetic condition of the console, since it is a good indication of just how well it's been taken care of. So I avoid even the most superficial scratches and scuffs. Controllers need to be clean with no visible gunk, of course be in good working order, and any cables need to be in good condition and not frayed or twisted. The power and connection cables aren't a deal breaker for me one way or the other. You can always order replacements online. I hate to say it, but avoid Chinese-made cables. I've had very little luck with them. And also be sure the asking price for the console takes into account you will need to pay someone else for working cables. There needs to be proof the console is functioning normally, or if that's not possible, make sure there is at least a good return policy. Many of the same rules also apply to handhelds. I would add the need to pay extra close attention to the condition of the screen, and if the rechargeable battery needs to be replaced, it can be, but make sure the price takes that into consideration. While Facebook Marketplace and OfferUp are two great ways to meet up and make purchases with local people, there are some precautions to take. Make sure the images of the item are showing all of its sides. The most important areas to pay attention to when it comes to games are labels, cartridge contacts, the undersides of discs, and on handhelds, as I already mentioned, check for scratches on the screens. If there are not enough pictures, ask for more, and if they refuse or give some reason as to why they can't, look elsewhere. If stock photos are being used, that's another big red flag. Before meeting up for the sale, make sure you have in writing the agreed upon price, be it an email or text message. Unfortunately, there are some sellers out there who are not above asking for more in person than what was agreed upon online. And report anyone who tries to pull this off. OfferUp and Facebook want to know who out there doesn't play by the rules. Be prepared to test the game or system. If it's a game, bring your own handheld to make sure the game works on your system. And if it's a system, bring a game to play on it. I had to turn a DSi down by bringing Super Mario 64 DS and found out I couldn't crouch due to the R button being unresponsive. This is also a good way to find out if the system has been altered or modified in an undesirable way. Lastly, location. Where you live can drastically affect the price of games available around your area. GameStop's price match policy can certainly work in your favor if you live in a higher priced area. I would avoid Walmart and Amazon when ordering online since it's usually third parties you're dealing with who jack up the prices way up. The locally owned and operated used game stores should take your priority. They will typically have the best selection because, unlike GameStop, they can carry games and systems from any generation. If prices in your city seem a little high, check the surrounding towns. I live in a small town with a game exchange, and their prices are pretty good. I sometimes go to a neighboring city that is much larger than where I live and visit another game store that has far more to choose from, but can be a lot more expensive. I shop at Game Exchange if I can find what I'm looking for there. On eBay, you can often find games and systems from other regions. With games, make sure you remain informed if you decide to go this route to save money, since Japan tends to have more used inventory available than the West. There may be a language barrier to take into consideration. The box art is usually vastly different from your own region's versions, which may or may not bother you, but it is worth mentioning. And if the system you're planning to use with the foreign game belongs to a different region, it may not work at all. Some systems are region locked while others aren't. Just be sure you'll be able to play the game you're importing. Same goes for systems. If it isn't region locked, you can potentially save some money if you're okay with a system from Japan. So that does it for all the tricks that I've learned to use while game hunting. I am curious to hear all of your thoughts on this topic. Did you learn anything new from this video? Do you have your own tips that I just didn't mention? Go ahead and share them in the comments. As always, this is Steven with Level 1 Sword advising you to stay sharp out there.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to keep on top of the videos, definitely take a sec to subscribe. I'm also on Twitter, Instagram, and Patreon if you want to follow me across the internet. Level 1 Sword also has a bi-weekly podcast, so give it a listen.